Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and start. So, Shmuel is actually on vacation. He is celebrating his 40th birthday and his wife's PhD. So, they were supposed to go in December, but as we all know, December travel was not exactly on the docket. So, they went ahead and were able to go now. And so he's on vacation. He's in Thailand, probably where it's warm, I guess. I don't know. Not sure what the weather is in Thailand. Probably warm. Warm and tropical, I think. So we thought today we would have Danny and Katie. They are in Jerusalem. Our the CFOIC Solidarity Tour just started yesterday. So today was really your first full day of touring, right? And so just give us an idea of, I don't know, what did you guys do today? What's on the plan for the rest of the tour? And then, Danny, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about touring in general during this time and, what are some of the safety precautions that you guys are taking? And, just what's the general feel on the street? Maybe like how are people receiving the group coming? And this is Danny Ehrlich, our tour guide, and Katie Ickrit. She's my assistant here in the office in the US, but she's currently in Jerusalem leading a tour because I couldn't go. So,
Well, look, Kim, today was our first full day together as a group, and it was a very emotional day. It was a very difficult day, emotionally. It wasn't physically difficult; it was emotionally difficult. We visited two frontline communities who were devastated by the Hamas attacks and massacres on October the 7th. One is called Moshav Netiv HaAsara, both farming communities, Moshav Netiv HaAsara, which is on the northern border of the Gaza area, and it's south of Ashkelon and just on the very northern fence between us and the Hamas-controlled areas. And then we went to Kibbutz Kvar Aza, which is on the eastern side of right on the fence with the border. We saw the destroyed houses and the brutality of the attacks. And then we were at the memorial site of the Nova Music Festival, where 3,500 young people were partying, enjoying themselves, singing about peace, and they were brutally attacked. Over 350 were murdered right there. Others were raped and injured. And then we ended the day at the Gush Katif Museum, which tells the story of the Jewish communities that were in the Gaza area that we ourselves, we Israelis, we took apart in 2005 and expelled people from their homes in the hopes that good. Instead, our neighbors in the Gaza Strip took for example, the greenhouses that we left for them. They could have turned and used them as farms. They destroyed them. So, the hope of 2005 that somehow Israel withdrawing would bring maybe some peace or something of that sort has unfortunately proven to be absolutely false hope. And if anything, it brought disaster. And maybe the hardest thing, we met, look, we talked about it in the group, is how do we come and stand in witness without becoming voyeurs? How do you come and stand with people without being sort of like, terrorism tourism, which would be it's the last thing that we want to do. So we work with residents of these communities. We spend a lot of time to find people for whom telling the story, for relating to us what happened, is part of their processing and part of their therapy. So it happens every time. I've been down a few times, but today every speaker we spoke to, right, we said, thank you so much. And they said, oh no,
thank you.
Thank you for coming, because you're letting me tell the story of my friends who were murdered here. You're letting me tell the story of our beautiful communities, which have been brutally attacked by our neighbors here. And don't forget, a lot of the kibbutzim and the moshavim there on the Gaza border area were people who ideologically always extended their hand to their neighbors in Gaza. And I've been down there a few times. They've related what really devastated them was, besides the over 3,000 Hamas terrorists who came into the communities with the express purpose of rape, murder, and pillage, It was also the residents of the towns that they knew, who
Right.
had been in their homes, who they had taken to hospitals in Israel, came behind the terrorists to loot their homes. That was absolutely devastating for them. So this is some of the things that they shared with the group today.
Thoughts, Katie?
It was a little weird because I've seen videos and footage from the communities in the weeks and months following the October 7th attack, but I haven't really seen anything that was super recent. And spring is coming here in Israel, even though it's still a frozen wasteland in places like Colorado. And the communities in the south are just gorgeous. Flowers everywhere. There's trees, there's birds. But especially I felt in Kibbutz Kfar Aza, in these beautiful homes with normally well-tended gardens, you could tell, fruit trees, but nobody's picked them. The fruit's just fallen off the trees and rotting. It was really eerie, the haunting stories and the destruction, but also the life from spring and nature. It was very unsettling. But also such beautiful, devastated communities. I really hope that, in spite of all the terrible things that have happened, it'll inject new life into the South because it looks like a beautiful place to live.
How about you guys are staying at a hotel in Jerusalem? Is it filled with evacuees, or have you run into?
It was what's happening now is most of the evacuees from the south have gone back home,
Oh, okay.
except for the frontline communities like where we were
Sure.
today, Kfar Aza, Netiv Asara. But most of the residents of Sderot have gone back home because there's an irony here. Look, these communities have endured 21 years of missile fire.
Right.
21 years. And somehow we all said we all got used to it. I mean, it's absurd. 21 years of missile fire from Gaza. But ironically, right now, the South is the safest than it's been in 21 years. There are still alerts from time to time, but right now it's safer than it's been since the early 2000s, which is crazy. So people have gone back home. So this hotel where we're staying in central Jerusalem until about 2, 3 weeks ago had dozens of families here. Now I think they said they have about 10 people still here. What we
Okay.
are still seeing in the hotels are the residents of some of the frontline communities in the South, who have to rebuild the communities physically
Right.
and emotionally. And we have about, I believe it's 50,000 displaced Israelis from the north, from Kiryat Shmona and the Galilee Panhandle, which, as far as I can tell, nobody's reporting on CNN,
No.
nobody's reporting it on the news, that there are over 50,000 displaced Israelis because Hezbollah, Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon, thinks it makes perfect sense that if Israel is defending itself against Hamas in the south, that attacking Israel from the north is perfectly legitimate. Have you heard UN condemnation of that? Have you heard anyone condemn that? Absolutely absurd. So in other parts of the country, there and other there's lots of people from the north, but most of the people in the south have gone home and are beginning to rebuild their lives again, except for the frontline kibbutzim. It's about probably 7 or 8 of them for the most part. So it's a good few thousand people who have not been able to go home yet, and it'll take about at least a year to rebuild and to
Right.
give them confidence to go back home, that they'll be protected by the army.
Well, and just to rebuild the people too, because I mean, those communities are the ones that were decimated population wise as well. I mean, I can't even imagine. But I know that Israel will go back, like without a doubt. I think it's very interesting that because Israel, because of what is happening in Gaza right now, and the IDF is on the ground, fighting Hamas and keeping them occupied and hopefully eradicating them. That's what's making it safe in Sderot and in all those frontline communities. When we pulled out, when Israel pulled out, when the Israeli government made the decision in 2005 to remove the Jewish communities in Gush Katif. Danny, you and we had this conversation. We knew it was a mistake. We struggled with it. We had been there. I've been to those communities with you on our trips. When the Jewish communities were still there, And they were gorgeous communities. They were amazing communities. And to know that they're gone, and immediately upon the removal of the Jewish presence in Gaza in 2005, Hamas took over. And today we have what we have because of that. So definitely happy that you're talking about the refugees or the evacuees from the northern part, because I don't think, no, you're right, nobody's talking about that. I just spoke at a church on Sunday in Virginia, and somebody was asking me about tourism and, you know, would they be would they, you know, what was it like to tour right now? And I said, well, it's probably a little bit of a ghost town, you know. And when I explained to them that, you know, all of the foreign workers have been have left the country, all of the men have been called up to the army, and all of the Arab workers that are normally there, or a lot of the Arab workers, are no longer, you know, employed or working or whatever. They were like, oh, that means there's a major, you know, shortage of employees. I said, huge shortage of employees. So are you guys seeing that at all? Have you experienced that?
Well, again, at the height of the war, we had over 350,000 soldiers called up, mostly reservists, which means that, you know, every field of endeavor in Israel, doctors and teachers and lawyers and social workers and nurses, factory workers, there were shortages everywhere because 350,000 men, mostly men, and some women were in the field. Our two sons, our son-in-law, were all in the field. They were in Gaza. They were on the border with Jordan for 3-4 months at a time. Now, it's you know and a lot of you, I know a lot of CFOIC people have been to Israel so many times, and you know the surreal nature of these things in Israel. In most of the country, we're in Jerusalem. It feels, you walk around, it feels normal. We forget, you know, because what's happened is most of the 350,000 are back home now. We
Oh,
have
okay.
Now we're down. Now we're in the maybe 10,000 or so soldiers down in the Gaza area, and a similar number up north, which is still a very large number, but that's mostly the draftees. You know, the reservists are mostly back home right now,
Okay.
which gives the country, but so our two sons are back in their homes with their families. Our son-in-law is back home with our daughter, with his wife. It gives a sense of normalcy, but you ask any Israeli family, the first question is, so are your boys home? You know, are they back
Right.
home? Are they still fighting? And the answer always is, yes, they're back home for now,
For now.
because obviously we're waiting to see what happens. Look, it's very, very clear that to finish the job in Gaza, and we're close, we must go into Rafah, which is the last stronghold. And as we've seen, the United States is doing a full court press to try to stop us from winning, from going into Rafah. In the north, Hezbollah has well over 100,000 missiles aimed at us. They have been firing them. Today, I think there were 30 missiles fired. Again, I'm sure it's not on the news. This has been going on for 5 months now, daily attacks against Israel from Lebanon. Now, this has to stop. But again, without getting too political, the current U.S. Government's policy is what we would have to call appeasement of Iran as a strategy. And that means not taking on the Iranian proxy in Lebanon, which is Hezbollah, which leaves that threat in place. Now, the Americans are saying they're trying to find a diplomatic solution. Don't forget, when Israel withdrew from Lebanon way back when, after we were attacked the last time from Lebanon, the agreement was that Hezbollah forces, or forces in general, would not be south of the Litani River. So the Americans are working on a diplomatic solution, which would push the forces further north. Whether that would be a solution, I don't know. Our sense is that we're kicking the can down the road. When we won't do it now, we'll have to face even stronger Hezbollah in the future. So there are question marks, but right now, traveling throughout Israel, people are, first of all, very grateful to see people coming, and Jewish groups and Christian groups, but especially as Christian groups, given the fraught nature of how Christians have cheated Jews over the centuries, which I don't have to explain to this crowd. for people in Israel to see Christians coming and saying, we are standing with Israel and we're here on the ground with you, that just means the world.
Wow, fantastic. What's on the agenda for the rest of the week?
Tomorrow we're going to the Jordan River Valley to see Qasr Al Yehud, the baptism site, Jordan River, and doing a little volunteer work on a farm. And then tomorrow's Wednesday, Thursday, what are we doing Thursday?
Thursday, we're hopefully going down to Beersheba to the Soroka Medical Center, and we're going to have a chance to visit soldiers and their families in rehab there. So that's going to be a real chance to share our hearts really with these families and with the soldiers there.
Oh, cool. Thursday. What about Friday? You give people, everybody wants to be on the trip with you. So you got to just walk us through what they're missing. So they'll come on the next one.
Friday's Jerusalem. So we're going to do all the fun Jerusalem things. We're doing lunch at the Shuk.
Right. So in the morning, we're going to get to Mount Herzl, which unfortunately isn't so fun. It's the National Military Cemetery, and we'll be at the section of those who have fallen in this war here. And folks, I don't want us to lose. And then we're going to visit Ethiopian Jews and hear their story of coming home. And then I'm excited. The group is coming to us in Efrat, where we live, just south of Jerusalem. We're gonna go to synagogue services at our synagogue. And then we'll have dinner. My wife Batya and I, we're so excied to host the group. We'll have Friday night Shabbat dinner in Efrat, which will be exciting. And then on Sunday, where are we going on Sunday? That's a good question. Oh, Sunday we're going back to Gush Etzion, and we're going to volunteer in the vineyards. We're going to be at Bat Ayin, in the vineyards in the hills of Jerusalem, the hills of Judah, which is so exciting. And then on Monday, the last day, we're going up. We'll be with Shmuel up in Shomron. We'll be at ancient Shiloh. We're also going to volunteer in Karnei Shomron. And get a sense of roots there. Oh, and Sandra Barris is with us today, and she'll be with us tomorrow also in the Jordan River Valley. So we're getting to see a lot of different Israeli communities. And people aren't seeing a lot of foreign visitors in Israel now today, although it's growing again. We at Keshet, where Keshet Educational Journeys have been hosting volunteer and solidarity missions over the last 2 months or so. And it really makes a difference. Also, the volunteer work, but more importantly, the emotional support and the spiritual support that, look, we feel alone and lonely in the air. Like you said, Kim, in United Airlines stopped flying, American Airlines stopped flying, most international airlines stopped flying. El Al continued to fly, and a few others. So we feel isolated. It's very important that people are coming.
Right. Well, we even had to move the dates on the tour forward by a day, because by the time we, definitely knew that we were going to come and we had enough people to come, we went to book airline tickets and there were no flights available because it was sold out. So that was an okay thing. That meant that people were coming. So thank God we had the flexibility. Any thoughts on when normal tourism will be back, or no idea?
Normal tourism. I mean,
get your crystal ball, Danny.
Well, interesting. So we have a lot of Jewish school groups from the U.S. who usually come in the spring, and I've got to say, right now they're planning on coming. These are 8th graders and 10th graders. This is part of their curriculum, and they're planning on coming, and hopefully they'll be able to. We have some general. Look, it's hard to do general tourism right now because when people come, people want to stand and witness, and to, again, not to come to watch someone else's misery, but to stand with people who have gone through misery and say, we are with you. But as we move further away from October 7th, we're finding where people are comfortable adding what you can call general Israel tourism a little bit into the mix as well. And that's important because, look, as we know, coming to Israel, has an amazing impact. You know, when you stand, we love to walk the land with Bible in hand. I mean, there's nothing like it, and we can still do that, which is exciting. So the focus of the country and the focus of people who care about Israel has certainly shifted right now, and we're so careful. We keep saying to ourselves and to each other, it's not about us. It's about the people we're visiting. It's not to make us feel good. We are here, obviously, by giving, we do feel good, but it's for us to stand with them and help them feel supported. So it's not our needs. You know, if you're on a tour, you know, you're the tourist, and your needs come first. That's not the case in this kind of visiting today. And it's so enriching, because always when you put other people first, you feel you're so much enriched by that. And here we can really see it. And personally, I've seen this over the last few months. Some of the toughest people that you meet, who you can't ever imagine need anything from anybody, thanking us almost in tears. Thank you for coming and letting me tell my experience, tell my story, so I don't feel alone. And that means the world. Now, look, our focus, me and Batya, my wife, over the last 5 months was our kids and grandkids. We got six grandkids here, and this number seven is on the way. One of our grandsons was born during the war, right at the beginning, and the husbands, the fathers, our sons and our sons weren't home, so spent a lot of time being, super grandparents as much as we could. We both worked full time. But trying to be super grandparents as much as we can to fill in for the boys that weren't home. And now they're home, which is great. We're still trying to give the support that we can, because they have to rebuild their school or work life. To imagine, 4 or 5 months, you're suddenly it's reservists. It's not career officers, although our son Ari is a career officer, but all the reservists who left their job, left their school. And 4 or 5 months later, you come back and you have to pick up the pieces. I'll give you an example. My oldest son, who's a reservist, Rafi, he's in nursing school, which means that there's like 90% women and maybe 10% men, which means that almost nobody was on reserve duty, right, except for the few men. There were a few women who were on reserve duty also, but mostly not. So once school started again about a month and a half ago, most students were able to just get back to their studies. Rafi was still in reserve duty in Gaza. He shows up now a month and a half later after school has started, and has to multiply this. People who run their independent businesses, right, who had to close for 4 or 5 months, and now you got to get your business going again. It's not easy. So there's a lot of those kind of challenges. So look, visiting Israel is. Some people say I'm going to wait till it's a calm time. Folks, that's apparently not part of God's plan. There's an old joke I want to tell at dinner tonight, but we didn't get to it. Moses was a stutterer. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this joke, right? So Moshe comes to the people of Israel and says, God says we're going to the land of Canaan, but he's a stutterer. What he meant to say was Canada, but what came out was Canaan, so we ended up in Canaan. Now, why is that relevant? We're right in the middle of everything. If we were in Canada, it might be quieter, but apparently that's not God's plan. We've always been in the center, and we're in the center again. So you can't wait for it to be calm in Israel, because that's apparently not the divine idea of Israel and where we're located. Look, during the height of the war, tourism was not happening. It wasn't safe. And we told people, this is not a time to come. Today, people can come, and there are thousands and thousands of visitors here from all over the world, and it makes a difference. So I would say, if you're planning on coming on it, don't hesitate. Don't wait. Yeah. Now, people are doing shorter trips, I would say, trips that would normally be 3 weeks or maybe 2 weeks, or if they're 2 weeks, they're coming for 10 days. 10 days, they're coming for a week. They're doing shorter, more focused trips. But I wouldn't hesitate today.
Yeah.
No one never knows the future.
This is true. This is true. No day like today. Now, are you going to Poland in May? I know that there was a trip. Are you leading that tour to Poland?
No, we've postponed that. We were going to set
it. Okay.
Again, I would say it focused, on it was, I guide Jewish heritage tours in Europe. mostly for the Jewish community, and the Jewish community has rightly been focused on Israel.
Israel.
And if people are going to travel, they're going to try to come to Israel. They're doing Jewish themed travel,
Okay.
so maybe we'll do it in the autumn or maybe next spring.
Okay. Good deal. Yeah, because I had seen it. My daughter really wants to come on it, so I told her not this year, but maybe in the future. So I'll tell her, hey, it got postponed.
But
So
Katie, Kim, that really opens up another window how Jews are feeling in the world today. Jewish communities in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, in England, all throughout Europe, and the world are feeling very insecure. Look, we all know how quickly anti-Israel becomes anti-Jewish. People might not like China, right? But no one's attacking Chinese communities. Yet Jews all over the world. Now, ironically, Eastern Europe is one of the places where Jews are feeling safer today. And it's ironic why. Look, what's happening in Western Europe? We have the older anti-Semitism, which you'll forgive me, was rooted in European Christianity and nationalism. That still exists. What's been added to it in Western Europe and in the United States now is a layer of Islamic anti-Semitism, people coming from countries where hatred of Jews is simply part of culture. It's just there. And just because you move to a new country, it doesn't disappear. Eastern Europe has very small Muslim communities. So yes, there's some of the old anti-Semitism that's still there, but the new layer has not been added, which is this deadly mixture, meeting of this woke, radical liberal, if you will, ideology with, of all things, radical Islam, creating a horrible hatred of Jews. So ironically, Eastern Europe less so than Western Europe or the United States today.
yeah. I think one thing that has come out of this war with Hamas, that's been kind of a giant wake-up call for America, has been the campuses and, the college campuses and just the rabid anti-Israel slogans and statements. And I mean, it doesn't take, a rocket science to look and see what happened and say who was the aggressor and who was the victim on October 7th. Like what happened here? What precedented this? But we saw, and I don't think, sadly, we weren't really surprised. I don't think you were probably surprised, Danny. But some people were certainly shocked that within a few short weeks, the first few days, everybody was very pro-Israel, and Israel had the right to defend themselves. And quickly, unfortunately, we saw that shift, and that Israel, should restrain themselves and should, not, hold themselves back. And hopefully it will bring about some change, and hopefully it will really bring some exposure to what is being taught on our college campuses, and what the real root that's happening down there. So
Look, certainly in the U.S., I mean, what we're seeing is, especially in the Ivy Leagues, is anti-Americanism and anti-Semitism hand in hand. I don't know in Australia if we're seeing the same kind of anti-Australian or I don't know, but the anti-Semitism is certainly there. But in the U.S., it's frightening. It's both, hating your own country and hating the Jews all at the same time in the name of liberalism and intellectual openness. And God, it's just so reverse of the reality.
They're supposed to be including everyone, but don't include those that might be based in the Bible, right? Might have a foundation of truth. Anyway. Well, you guys stay safe. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I know that, every single day in Israel is an adventure, and take lots of pictures, send us lots of videos. We can't wait to hear all about it later, and hopefully soon we'll be there again.
All right. So Lila Tov from Jerusalem.
Lila Tov. Did anyone have any
Signing off.
questions for them before we sign off? Any questions from anyone? Let me check. No.
I would like to say something about the public relations. Ever since October 7th, the sixth or seventh, Israel has
Seven.
taken a different stance, because prior to that, there was a philosophy that when there was a terrorist attack, you would clean it up and not even talk about it. It's like, don't let the world know we've been harmed. Now, everybody in Israel is saying, please help us get the word out. So I just wanted you to know that there are people, there are sources of information I follow on Telegram, and they say that they cannot post on Facebook or YouTube because they would be canceled. So what I do is when I find some information that I want to put out there, I take a screenshot and I post the screenshot. So there's no text. The analog, the
Algorithm.
algorithms, they can't figure out what my picture is. And but the text is embedded in the JPEG. So we're trying to get the information out, and I follow people on Instagram and Telegram. So there are sources that are telling us about, for instance, the evacuees in the north. We've heard that, and about the aid being stolen by Hamas.
Right.
And the false information they put out by the numbers of deaths. So it's
Which
there.
is parroted by the President of the United States.
Exactly. He repeats Hamas's statistics, which are false. It's very frustrating, but we do support you, and we love you, and we miss you.
Amen. God bless.
Yaakov, go ahead and you can unmute yourself.
Okay, I just want to say you spoke about the campuses in states, but I want to tell you in UK there are a lot of protests in London, in Bristol, Liverpool, Manchester. But what I find very odd, most of the protesters are not the Palestinian people or so-called Palestinian. I always fight with people. There's no such a thing as Palestinian, but okay, you know how the talk goes then. So, but you have the rainbow people protesting for Palestine. You have almost like a gay parade for Palestine. I say, are you actually know what you are doing? Just go to the Gaza, and at that moment, what will happen? What you protesting for? They have no idea. So I get the impression that somehow there's some kind of a force. I'm Jewish myself, and I run an organization in Bristol. When Sandra was here in Bristol, we have a lot of talk about it. And those people, now they are against us. They don't know why. And who actually runs this? I do understand. Let's say I understand when the Palestinians will protest. Okay. But why the white people, young between 19 and 29, they go on a protest for the Palestine with their rainbow flags on it as well? They have no idea what they're saying and what they're protesting for. That's a phenomenon, actually, about this.
It's true. Sadly, it is very, very true that people are protesting and they have no clue when and where they are, or what it is that they think that they know. They think that they believe the PR and the propaganda that's been put out, but to actually go and visit and see it for themselves, they'd get a huge wake-up call. Edward, what was your question? Can you unmute yourself? Do you have a... There you go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I definitely support Israel with prayers and finances and whatever. I just wanted to say, you commented about the anti-Semitism in the U.S. There's also anti-Christian right now. We're actually in the middle of a communist coup going on in our country under this administration. All the evidence is there, the open borders, the crime, everything. This is being allowed to happen to bring down America from within. And it's anti-American, it's anti-Israel, it's anti-Christian, it's anti-life, this administration, okay? So normally, and for years, the Jewish people in the United States have voted Democrat. This is the most corrupt administration we've ever had. Are you witnessing, and I know you're not here, but are you witnessing an awakening of the Jewish people in this country to how evil and wicked the Democratic Party is right now? I'm not saying it's always been, but this is evil. This is wickedness that's going on in America under this administration. And I'm not saying the Republicans are perfect, but there is a huge contrast between the two. And to me, for the Jewish people to continue to vote for Democrats is suicide, as it is for any American. Thank you.
Well, Edward,
go ahead, Danny. No, you go ahead.
I think many Israelis would agree with you. And certainly polling has shown a weakening of Jewish support for the Democrats. The big test, I think, is going to come in the next few weeks. Until now, because of all sorts of other issues, the Biden administration has been fairly supportive of Israel. But you already see the strain coming. They're trying to bring down the Israeli government. They're trying to prevent Israel from undoing their appease Iran policy. And look, the Americans are a very important ally for Israel. We're a small country. We're an important country. We're still a small country. And America needs to be the leader of the free world. Whether it's doing so or not now, I think is open to very serious questions. So we've already seen some shifting, and look at some of the polls, but I think most American Jews are still living in a sort of fantasy land that Edward described a little bit. And I think the next few weeks are going to be a real test because as the administration is going to really turn the screws on Israel. My sense, unfortunately, is that not all, but certain large parts of American Jewry are going to fail this test. And they're going to line up behind the administration rather than behind Israel. Oh, they'll pay some lip service, to
Right.
As a right, etc. But look. The American Jewish history has its own issues. Why things developed the way they did. Why Jews found a home in the Democratic Party rather than the Republican Party. But you have to always keep reevaluating reality. And certainly the last few decades, it's been the Republican Party which has been the supporter of Israel more strongly than the Democratic Party. That doesn't mean there aren't Democrats who support Israel. There are. And it doesn't mean that we don't have the isolationist end of the Republican Party who could be problematic for Israel as well. These are all true. But on the overall balance, I think we need to have more Jews looking at the elections. Also, they're not putting Jewish interests look, they're Americans and they should be voting American interests. I get that 100%, but supporting Israel is also an American interest, and American Jews need to speak out more strongly. The Orthodox community, by and large, speaks out strongly, supporting candidates that support Israel. But the more liberal denominations, some of them do, some of them don't. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. There are groups, within the Jewish community trying to make this change. But there's a lot of fear, and people believe the lies. When the president of the United States gets up and implies that Israel is deliberately targeting civilians, that's a powerful statement, and it's so far from the truth. We talked about it today. Israel is the most moral, IDF is the most moral army that has existed in the history of the world. There's never been such a moral army. If we were targeting civilians, there'd be 250, 300,000 civilians dead by this point. The fact that even the Hamas propaganda speaks about 30,000 dead, of whom at least half are combatants, and that is remarkable. It means that the Israeli army is doing everything it can to avoid civilians. And if we were trying to do a genocide, for God's sake, that they're accusing us of, there'd be millions dead. I always say, if we're we're doing a genocide or an ethnic cleansing, we need to go to genocide and ethnic cleansing school, because we ain't doing it, because we don't want to do that. We do not want to kill our neighbors. We want our kids to wake up and say, you know what, we can live here in peace. This is a land that God has blessed. Look how the Jews, look how the Israeli Arab citizens, the citizens of Israel who are Arabs, have prospered here. We can do this also. That's what we want to wake them up for. And if the Western leadership would push that agenda, then maybe that could happen. Instead, they push these lies, and American Jews listen to these lies too, and many of them believe it. And that's very sad for us in Israel, certainly.
Yeah, I just want to say thank God. So far, Netanyahu is not listening to Joe Biden, listening to his counsel. Netanyahu is doing what what needs to be done for Israel. Period.
And don't forget, it's, they always said the Jews are the canary in the mine shaft. One of our speakers today said, I thought so well. He said, "We're the front gate to the West." And radical Islam, if it feels if it can defeat Israel, then the way is open to defeat the West. And it's not like they keep it a secret. They've been saying this for decades, that this is what they're going to be doing. But some of our leadership around the world is asleep at the wheel. And God willing, our leaders will have the strength to say, with all due respect and appreciation, to the United States of America and to our other allies who have helped us in a variety of things. So we must protect our citizens. We also think we're protecting the entire world, but that's maybe neither here nor there. We must defeat Hamas. If we don't defeat Hamas, our neighbors to the north, Hezbollah, Iran, who's funding and pulling all the strings, will say, you can defeat Israel, you can attack Israel, be the clear aggressor, lose to some degree, and still the West will not let Israel really win and defeat the enemies. That cannot be the message that goes to our enemies here, because that is just too dangerous for all of us here. So again, prayer and hopes and pressure on elected officials. You have these tiny, actually often very small group of Islamic protesters, of pro-Hamas protesters, and yet the media will make it seem like there are thousands of them at a time. Sometimes it's just a few dozen, but they're making noise at every congressional hearing, at every Senate hearing. We need to also step up and make some noise in a different way, perhaps, but the elected officials have to hear us. And I think as Christians, for many people in the group who are Christians, you have an ability to influence U.S. policy more so than Jewish communities. Look, if a letter, if an email comes in from New York, pro-Israel, it might not be as impactful as an email that comes in from Missouri or from Tennessee or from Minnesota or from wherever, where there aren't large Jewish communities. It tells the politicians that there's a large population that is interested in America continuing to stand with Israel. And it's the same thing for Britain and Australia and really all the countries. Standing up and being counted is part of what we have to do.
Yeah, I think definitely, when we talk about anti-Israel sentiment or anti-Semitic incident, or anti-Christian, anti-American, it really is anti-God. Because what are they attacking? They're attacking our Judeo-Christian values. They're attacking the standards of the Bible. And that's if you take it to a baseline, that's kind of where I feel like it's at. And we just have to keep praying, keep believing, keep speaking truth, and not letting anything stop us from letting our voices be heard. So, well, guys, I don't want to keep you too long. Doesn't look like anybody else has any questions. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Danny and Katie. Go get a good night's sleep. And
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.